I'm endlessly fascinated and curious about the world around us, about business, about politics, about the arts, about culture, developments, social issues, and the people. Most importantly, about the people that are shaping our future. Every night, I get the opportunity to have conversations, to dive into conversations with thought leaders, with change makers, entrepreneurs, politicians, and everyday heroes who unpack the ideas and stories that I think matter to all of us. What's the future of our economy? What's the future of our country? How do we build stronger communities? What can we learn from music, theater, sports, politics, the arts? How does policy shape our real lives? What does leadership look like, real leadership in today's environment? If it's interesting and relevant and topical and we're talking about it, you'll hear about it here at 6 o'clock on the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. I want to have real conversations, in-depth conversations. These are ideas we're sharing. This is the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. Thanks for joining me.
I am.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. I want to talk a little bit about the real estate industry in Canada today. I was at a really fascinating breakfast a couple of weeks ago, and Fred Cassano, who is head of the real estate function at PwC, made a really interesting presentation. And his opening slide was, real estate right now is like driving in the fog. Drive too slowly and you'll get hit from behind. Drive too fast and you'll fall off a cliff. So it was a fascinating conversation about where we are in the real estate business. And I think a lot of us are a little bit concerned about what's going on. Fred Cassano is the partner of National Real Estate Leader for PwC Canada. As the National Real Estate Leader, he leads a real estate practice with approximately 250 senior staff focused on real estate, which he says translates to strong local teams as well as a large national team to support and deliver PwC's real estate industry focus team, assurance, tax, real estate advisory, property tax, real estate valuers, restructuring experts, and real estate technology advisors that are involved in key business issues in regards to the industry. And I got to tell you, this presentation made everyone stop and think and wonder and a little bit of worry. So, Fred, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for joining me at the breakfast as well, and I appreciate you reaching out.
Fred, the emerging trends in real estate that you discussed was based on a survey of what, 1,250 responses around Canada and the United States. That's incredible.
That's correct. Approximately 1,250 surveys, and then in-depth interview with 210 this year in Canada, and in over 300 in the U.S. One-on-one CEOs, cross-section of many different people that are invested in real estate, whether it's operators, pensions, private equity, developers. So it's a good cross-section of investors in real estate.
And what was the issue? What were the emerging trends? What did you discuss at that breakfast?
Well, we could start with the top three emerging themes and trends. One is we're in a new era of real estate and reinvention, if you will. The cross-section of real estate combining with energy, tech, manufacturing is really going to unlock a whole bunch of different new ways of business and reinventions of business models. And we can get into that in a moment. The second one is a new playbook is emerging on deal making with private equity, private funds, family offices, really filling the void, if you will, of traditional capital. And we can get into that in a moment as well.
So what are you saying, that this is more private investment than the public REITs that have been so prevalent in the past, or big pension funds and life insurance companies?
Pension funds and private REITs will still be a big part of the capital. However, they're patient. They're call it redeploying capital and shifting portfolios. What I'm saying, or what we heard loud and clear, the first movers right now on opportunistic investments are private REITs, family offices, private capitals that will include private debt. So those are the first movers. We're also hearing that pensions are still going to be deploying in Canada, especially, which is good to hear, but more patient rather than first movers right now on the private side.
And I think we've heard this from lots of people, but I guess you commented that the condo market is, if not dead, on life support, but purpose-built rental apartment building is under construction and under development. Is that the case?
Absolutely. So last year, we said condos are frozen, the whole market. Investors are gone for a whole bunch of reasons. I think this year what we're hearing is the condo market is in a restructuring mode. What's it going to look like in the next 5 years? We don't know. We can certainly talk about that, but the mood has shifted towards a decisive shift towards purpose-built rental, and it's driven by the frozen condo market, but also lots of incentives from a policy perspective that are fueling capital and investment into purpose-built rental. And for years we've heard numbers don't work. Right now they're still, call it thin, but certainly with CMHC financing, rebates on development charges from a municipal perspective, to GST rebates on rental, to carve-outs from a tax perspective on interest deductibility. There's a lot of policy shifts towards making the numbers work on purposeful rental, and as a result, there's more capital being deployed in this area.
One of the other things that you talked about, and other people at that session and in the panel that followed you talked about, was how the office market has changed, and that I think it was described as sort of A-plus office market in downtown urban areas was doing spectacularly well, but the C and D market was not doing well. Can you and suburban office wasn't doing well. Can you elaborate on that a bit if you could?
Absolutely. So it was interesting. Our interviews take place between May and end of August, and I always get worried about not missing or not covering the latest breaking news on trends. And certainly, office to me in the summer changed the mood from we're not out of the woods yet to wow, positive investment sentiment on office, especially AAA, which includes highly amenitized office, to on transit nodes, close to residential and retail. So certainly a few things drove that positive investment sentiment. Number one, office mandates, whether it's from the banks and government agencies, certainly helped the investment sentiment, and people just started coming back organically from many different organizations. So the triple A leasing velocities started to unfold, and even today we're seeing office being sold. I think there's 9 active sales in the GTA, all of which are under contract. And I understand from my brokerage friends that those contracts are with foreign investment. So that's positive sentiment on the AAA. Now, we hope that will percolate into the Bs, but still Bs are challenged because they're not highly amenitized. And maybe perhaps they're on in the suburban markets. But we're hopeful that as leasing picks up on the AAA, that'll spill over to the Bs. But we're
for people listening today that aren't familiar with sort of what's an A office versus a B office, can you give us a little bit of a description? I think we intuitively know, but maybe you could be more explicit.
Absolutely. So the AAA is lots of amenities, whether it's at the floor or the common area space, or it'll include retail to access to if you think of the well, you have access to shopping, also office, and close to hotels. So you have also aspects of of sustainability measures, where it's energy efficient. So all of those criteria build to triple A, or the trophy assets. The Bs are not on transit nodes, don't have amenities that would include access to gyms or food court, and they're not close to highly trafficked areas or nodes. So those are the Bs, and commonly right now in the suburbs. So that's the distinction between AAA and also now your different categories of B. Now there's also the C class, which are your older buildings, and which, so not surprisingly, but because they're, call it, cheaper from a rental perspective, are gaining traction because they're more affordable. And some of them, people like the brick facade inside. So the C's are actually gaining more traction, but the B's are in a challenged environment.
It was interesting. I was at a different conference where the chairman of Allied was speaking, and he talked about mixed-use development. And he said that he thought that the office development of the future would be mixed-use developments like the Well, where you've got condos, rental, office, retail, gym, all together in one development. And he also referenced the new CIBC building across from Scotiabank Arena. And he said, you think right beside you've got condos, rental, you've got on the fourth floor a big steak restaurant, you've got across the street Union Station and Scotiabank Arena, and that people really want not just a building with a food court, but a building with a whole bunch of other amenities. What do you think? Is that true?
I think it's desirable, but it's also very challenging. You have a lot of different stakeholders that need to come together, because it's not only one builder that's at play. So I would think that those are desirable locations, but very challenging. You have retail, you have hotel, office, and residential, different policy, zoning entitlements to agreements on common spaces. So while desirable, very, very challenging to come together. So kudos to CIBC and Hines, and I think it's the case and others on that building, and also RioCan, the Well, Allied. They are very challenging endeavors, but certainly desirable, as you say.
At the breakfast, I thought you did a great job of sort of elevating and talking about a numerous, economic wide issues that we need to be aware of as we enter 2026 that impact, the overall economy as well as just the real estate market. Can you go through some of those issues for us, please?
For sure. Certainly labor shortages, productivity, costs still persist. So while maybe there was some, softening of labor costs, that's offset with higher tariffs on some goods that are crossing the border. Productivity continues to be an issue from a construction perspective. And certainly, there was a recent report from CMHC that also talked about that. So we need to think about how we can improve productivity to build faster. And also on the labor, while on that point, we still have many retirements that are going to happen in the next few years. So as the construction market slows down, we may actually accelerate the number of retirements and potentially have labor shifting to other industries as well. So I'm really concerned about labor as a potential issue, and we certainly heard that in our interviewees. Power constraints, and I would say I would add water when we start thinking about data centers.
Water and data centers? Why do you need? I thought you needed electricity. Why do you need water?
Absolutely. So there's electricity impact on the grid for sure, but then also there's lots of heat that gets generated with data centers. So you need a mechanism to cool it. So certainly cooler climates.
I've heard
Alberta,
about this.
right?
I'm
And also
astounded
water.
that these big companies are building in Texas and Arizona in the deserts. Why are these big, huge companies building their massive data centers in the desert in the southern United States when heat's a big issue?
That's a fantastic question. A few reasons. One, you need large masses of land. Sometimes that's cheaper, but also Texas in particular, you're close to energy, whether it's your fossil fuels, but other alternative energies that help fuel data centers. But with those large heat inducing cities, you need to have water to help cool the data center. But certainly, power constraints are becoming an issue when you think about data centers being fueled by AI, but also being fueled by um, coin-based technology or Bitcoin, the EV world, and also decarbonization, which is the continued electrification. So that's going to put continued pressure on power.
I would have thought with our nuclear energy, our hydro energy, our colder climate, the Great Lakes, etc., we should be building data centers here in Ontario.
Absolutely. And I think you mentioned absolutely we have the determinants or the key success factors to be attracting a lot of data center demand and supply, but also nuclear energy is, I wouldn't put a number to it, but call it a decade away in terms of being an alternative source of energy to fuel data centers. And certainly, new legislation, I think, will help fast track that in Ontario. I think Calgary, which is one of the reasons why it's on our top market to watch. It's call it business friendly, but also if you bring your own power behind the meter, as they say it, including nuclear, you're seeing a lot more investments in data centers go to Alberta before Ontario, and hopefully regulation changes in Ontario to help accelerate that for those type of investments.
I think it's a huge opportunity that we're maybe not missing out on, but we're not exploiting to the extent. And if you take a look at how AI and expenditures on data centers and things like that have fueled the U.S. economy, and we're just not getting that benefit in Canada. For some reason, we're just not investing that kind of money in Canada that we need to invest to be at the forefront of this new AI industry. And I think that you and other people, on that panel, really spoke about that. We're going to take a break for some messages, and we're going to come back. And in the next section, we're going to really focus on, if we could, Fred, this trend to away from condos and toward purpose-built rental. And I really would like you to walk us through that because I think it is a massive trend within the housing business in the GTA, but also, frankly, across Canada. We're going to take a break now for 2 minutes. Back with Fred Cassano of PwC, head of the real estate business at PwC, in just 2 minutes. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. We're talking about the real estate industry in the GTHA, Greater Toronto Hamilton area, as well as, frankly, across Canada, with Fred Cassano, who is the head of PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC's real estate business. I had the privilege of listening to him at a breakfast session that the Urban Land Institute and PwC co-sponsored. There was really a very frank, hard-hitting conversation about what's happening in the real estate business in the GTHA as well as across Canada. Fred, I wonder if we could focus for the next couple of minutes on this conversation that you had in regards to what you called frozen condo business. I called the dead condo business, and this trend toward purpose-built rental, because it really is a dramatic change in what's been occurring in the last 10, 15 years in Toronto, is it not?
For sure. And one of the main reasons is we're at record low condo sales. I think we reported that condo sales in the GTHA are at lowest levels since 1990.
You went from like 30,000 condo sales in like 2020 and 2021 to less than a couple thousand last year.
Yeah, it's astounding. But it's driven by investors have evaporated because there's no certainty right now on the resale appreciation. and increasing carrying costs. So the condo market predominantly was fueled by investors. So if you take the investors out of the picture, then it evaporates a lot of sales. So also user demand has changed. I think we're starting to see and hear more about the unit sizes need to be bigger and more accommodating to the end user demand for condos. So as a result,
There was an executive from Mattamy Homes that followed you that said that in the last 5 years, builders were focused on what investors wanted, not what the people that actually lived in the apartments or condos wanted. And he said we needed to refocus the industry to focus on what the end consumer really wants. Do you think that's been part of the problem?
it's part of the problem, absolutely. And I don't, blame the developers that were feeding into the demand because certainly low interest rates, high density policy drove a lot of investors to the condo market. However, we're at a stalemate where again the carrying costs are higher. The appreciation is not there. In fact, the prices for condos have trailed downwards in the GTA. I'm hearing as low as 700 a square foot. And just
From what?
just 2-3 years ago, we were at launches at 1250 to 1300 a square foot. That's a
1250 to 700. That's a $500 reduction on 1250. That's like almost 25-30%.
absolutely.
That's huge.
The developer, that's the other issue here is would you put shovels to the ground when your costs are at 700 a square foot, if not higher? So the answer is no, right? So if you're now pivoting to purpose-built rental and putting more of your capital risk and not relying on the pre-sales to help fuel your construction, then condo developers are pivoting to purpose-built rental.
You also mentioned that there was sort of a permanent rental market that was developing. So some people are thinking that we're going to go more like the United States and even Europe, where renting forever is part of the reality of life. And one person said that there's no choice for young people; they have to do that. What do you think of that?
Well, we kind of predicted that in our report in 2018, Emerging Trends, the rise of the permanent renter. And as affordability gets tougher from an ownership perspective, we will see more decisive shift towards the permanent renter. But that's healthy, I think, from a market to have multiple choices. And if you have supply that we can increase from a rental perspective, then the consumer will have choice, and hopefully, we'll get more investors to come back. Sorry, not investors, but more choice also on the low rise and the condos. It'll look a lot different in the future, but we need choice and increase the supply so that everyone can help with the affordability challenge.
You suggested that affordability was one of the major shifts. Can you expand on that?
Well, so affordability is driven really, for the most part, from a supply perspective. And we've heard of stats, whether it's CMHC's statistics that show just to help restore affordability, we need to build over $500,000 for 500,000 units in the next 10 years just to restore affordability. But we're not building we're only building half of that amount.
Sorry, can I interrupt? 500,000 in total or 500,000 a year?
500,000 a year.
500,000 a year, that's incredible.
That's incredible.
That's like twice what we're building now. Is that not correct?
That's correct. So we're building approximately half of that. And if you don't have just demand and supply logistics or economics, excuse me, if you don't have that supply, then it'll just continue to fuel demand, and the consumer will have choice. So the answer is no. The answer is no. So if you're now pivoting to purpose-built rental and putting more of your capital risk and not relying on the pre-sales to help fuel your construction, then and not help restore an affordable price to get into the market. That's on the home ownership side. And if we don't do the same on the purpose-built rental, increasing the supply, then we'll start seeing rents increase. And for now, rents have come down. I think in Toronto, we're hearing 3.5 a square foot for rental, whereas in a few years ago, we were talking about $5 a square foot. So
Seriously, what? So rental prices have gone from $5 a square foot down to $3.50?
on average, correct, right? So
Again,
that's
a dollar 50 on $5 is that same 20 to 30% that we were talking about on condos.
absolutely. But what's fueling that is the shadow market, the rental shadow market was fueling.
What's a rental shadow market? Please
So
explain
the
that.
so the condos were providing supply to the market, and you had investors investing in condos that would then turn around and rent them. So that was providing what we're calling the shadow rental market, right?
Why is it
So
called the shadow market?
because it's individuals, landlords versus large institutional organizations that have multiple units that are renting. So we call it the shadow market, meaning investors that were renting their condo were providing supply to the rental market, which is
So
still good. Sorry, go ahead.
please go on. You say it's still good, but what? It's not as good as the big purposeful rental buildings that have got professional management,
But,
etc.
but now you have unsold units and record amount of closings happening in 2026 from a condo perspective. So capital is shifting towards rental, but you also have a large supply of closings happening on the condo side. So together you're creating a large supply of units for rent, which is creating a bit of a supply gap. One of the reasons why rental rates are coming down. However, if we don't build enough units on the rental side, then those rates will likely continue to increase. Now
I
we're
agree with you,
seeing.
but one of the things that people I think too often neglect is this huge amount of sales 4 or 5 years ago turned into construction 3 or 4 years ago, which will turn into deliveries this year and next year. And so I've seen graphs comparable to the graph that you showed about condo sales, but that were deliveries. And my understanding is that 2025 and 2026 will be some of the largest deliveries for any year in history, which means that this shadow rental market is going to increase dramatically. And lots of us, many of us have seen all these cranes around Toronto because they're finishing off the condo buildings that were sold 5 years ago, started construction 4 years ago, and are going to just be finished this year and next year and maybe a little bit in 2027, which means that there's going to be a whole bunch of supply coming down in the marketplace, which is going to logically decrease rental rates even more. No?
It should, but we're also hearing that there's no shovels to the ground on new construction. So by 2028, 2029, the expected deliveries for condos is less than 1,000. So there's no units that are being constructed.
And you don't think it's going to be sort of picked up by and bridged by construction of purposeful rental? You don't think all the purposeful rental buildings will be built to fill up that hole?
No, I would point to an Urbanation report that says even with all the purpose-built rental construction that's estimated, we're still short annually 121,000 units. So we're still short on new units for rental demand. And then if the condo market fails to restart, then we'll have the shadow market also going down to zero, right, by 2029, which as a result, if we don't have supply continuing every year, then we'll be back to potential higher rates of rent in 2029, 2030. So
what can we do? What can we do to solve this problem?
I think there's a few things. I really like the government's initiative around Build Canada Homes, investing $13 billion to unlock and capital to unlock public lands available to build, whether it's building on Canada lands to Canada Post to Canada Defence, and partnering with the private sector to unlock lands at an affordable cost, and whether it's entering into land leases or incentives to build on lands that the government owns. So I really applaud that announcement. The other thing we need to really focus on is continued cost reductions on development, and GST is certainly one of those aspects. We saw both the federal government, Ontario government, provide a rebate for HST and GST on new home constructions for first-time buyers. I think they needed to go a bit further. They need to go further to incentivize all new home construction, because that would then spur more development in the resale or the in the move up market, so that those individuals that are currently in an older home and wanting to move up to a new home, that would then unlock supply on the the resale market. So I think GST incentives are very important. We also heard
I had some people from Build and Rescom and CMHC on my show, and they indicated that the taxation on housing was over 30%. And clearly, and the tax was taken out sort of day one, while the profit the developers made was 5 years hence. And they described that we're taxing real estate development sort of the way we tax cigarettes and alcohol, almost like it's a sin tax, which is to diminish sort of the consumption of cigarettes and alcohol. And they said, "What the blank are we doing that with housing when we so desperately need it?" What do you think? Are we taxing housing development way too high?
Absolutely. Between development charges, park levies, GST, land transfer tax, it's an overtaxed and over-regulated industry. Let's maybe double click on the development charges for instance, because we've heard a few times from the real estate industry. Maybe we can use methods that other countries use to help drive down development costs, because it's hard to just remove development charges. We need to replace them, and maybe things like municipal utility districts, or call it MUDs, that issue bonds to help pay for infrastructure, whether it's sewers and waters, and then those bonds, which are at attractive rates, are paid over a period of time through property tax or special assessments as the development is finished. And what you're doing is you're taking potentially $80,000 to $100,000 per home, and you're shifting it away from the developers that have to front that cost initially to a longer period of time. And that bond, by the way, is an attractive investment to pension funds that are looking for a steady return. So I think initiatives like that, Brian, are very important.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that that's the way we fund electricity with our electricity utilities, et cetera. I think that that's the way most American municipalities finance those kinds of infrastructure expenditures. And I think that it's really unfair to have water, sewer, et cetera, being 100% paid for by a tax on new home purchasers, and that's young people that are trying to get in the marketplace that are spending 100, 150, 200 grand in development charges, which is a down payment effectively, and they're forced to do that, which is a benefit to all of society, not just to the people that are moving in. So I completely agree with you. I think that's got to be one of the major changes that have got to take place. What about just time period? We've heard a lot about sort of what Carney's going to do to streamline the approvals of pipelines to the West Coast. But then also people have talked about it takes longer to approve a project in Toronto than it does to actually build a project in Toronto. Is that right thing to do?
No, and you referenced that there was one of the CEOs from Mattamy talk about, we can build a home in 180 days, right, from our own construction processes, but it takes 5 to 7 years just to go through the approval process. So I hear that from across the industry, that if we can accelerate time horizons from zoning as of right to site plan, it'll really improve getting more supply to the market faster. And I think certainly there's been measures made on both the municipal and provincial level to help accelerate, but we need more. We need more to do that. And certainly, one way to do it could be to use AI as a tool. Also, different municipalities have different zoning requirements. Maybe there's more of an effort to standardize the type of units that are being built so that we can get through the process quicker. But certainly accelerating approvals has been loud and clear a request from the community.
No question. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back with Fred Cassano from PwC, head of the real estate business there at PricewaterhouseCoopers, in just 2 minutes. And we're gonna switch. He also did a really interesting chat about emerging disruptors, real estate that are disrupting the real estate industry, that I thought was interesting, and again sort of brought people to some of the other things that are impacting what's going on in the real estate business. We're going to take a break and be back with Fred in just 2 minutes. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. We got Fred Cassano with us. He's the head of the real estate business at PwC. He made a really interesting presentation at a Urban Land Institute PwC co-sponsored sort of trends in the real estate market, real estate business a couple of weeks ago that I found fascinating. And Fred, in addition to talking about purposeful rental and the condo business and tariffs and trades and interest rates and things like that, you really broadened and talked about a bunch of other things that are impacting the real estate business that I found kind of interesting. And you mentioned like geopolitical instability. Tell me about some of these other impacts and how and why they're impacting investments in real estate.
Well, one of our leading disruptors, Brian, is artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence in real estate? Seriously?
It ranks number one. And certainly from a commercial real estate perspective, where it's very important to look for efficiencies to help drive NOI, we're moving away from pilots to now predictive analytics, to leasing abstraction tools to help drive efficiencies on leasing velocities, to understanding HVAC maintenance schedules, to maybe use more predictive tools, and certainly AI to help fuel that as an enabler. So I think AI as a disruptor is upon us, and it's not only about algorithms. What we're hearing now, like what we previously said, it is AI is driving data governance to power needs to water and the whole ecosystem from a growth perspective. So AI as a disruptor for commercial real estate is a big item. I also think that the next stage will be on the construction side. We talked about labor shortages and struggles on the productivity, combining tech to help maybe with procurement, to scheduling, and then now robotics. And we talked about also Build Canada Homes. One of the biggest things that Build Canada Homes is trying to promote is modern methods of construction, which includes prefab, modular assembly, and robotics. So certainly, if you combine tech, AI, that will also help on the construction of new homes using, call it now, modern methods of construction. So AI is certainly a disruptor, but certainly with
geopolitical instability. How does geopolitical instability impact the real estate business?
Well, I mean, tariffs would be one of the biggest things that would result in increased costs, especially on the lumber side, on the steel side. Geopolitical also on the defense. If you look at our November 4th budget that the government just produced at the federal level, the level of defense spending, I understand is close to $81 billion over the next 5 to 10 years. And that's going to be a beneficiary, I think, from an industrial perspective, from real estate, because you're going to start seeing more industrial sites, especially along defense nodes, west and east, Ontario and Quebec, potentially for munitions and other things. So if you think about geopolitical, you're talking about tariffs, you're talking about wars, you're talking about instability on interest rates and how to fund, and then you have the defense spending. So I think all in all, there's a lot of concerns related to geopolitical, but also maybe some opportunities, especially on the industrial segment.
You also talked about natural disasters and extreme weather and sustainability regulations. And we had this conversation that sort of ESG and issues about climate change and things like that had gone away, mainly because of Donald Trump and sort of where the US was. And then other people said, no, it's real. And it's still very prevalent in Europe. And it's going to be coming back to Canada. And then one person said, you got to be listening to sort of that Wayne Gretzky comment about looking to where the puck is going rather than where it's been. And the United States may be where it's been, and the world is where it's going. So what do you think about sustainability regulations, climate change, ESG, stuff like that?
I think it's super important. I think for over the years, we've been focused on the reporting side of ESG. I think if you hear the rhetoric, not the rhetoric, and that's probably not the right word, but if you think the messaging coming from Europe is about value creation, it's about understanding your data to help drive efficiencies and as a result, extend the life of your assets and maybe create value around your whole portfolio of real estate. So I think it's here to stay. And also, we're starting to hear more about efficient or sustainably linked loans. So if you can articulate how, with the use of data, that you're achieving energy savings, then we will reward you. We being the financial community, the banks, and other creative financing vehicles to give you a reduced financing charges if you demonstrate effort. So I think we're moving beyond reporting to ROI, value creation, and actually savings. You mentioned climate disasters. Every year we're hearing more and more costs related to climate, and certainly when we talk about climate and resilience, the narrative and the conversation changes, especially as it relates to insurance costs. So I think if companies can demonstrate actions towards adaptation or measures taken to not climate proof, but climate ready your assets, then that can lead to favorable discussions with insurance companies of not increasing premiums. If you don't take those actions, that as a result in the future, your premiums will likely go up. So I think ESG is definitely here to stay. Sustainability, climate, those are big concerns that you need to get ready for.
You also focused on another area we haven't spoken about that lots of people have commented on, that the baby boomers are getting to an age now that they're looking for seniors housing. Tell me what you think is that opportunity in seniors housing.
The silver tsunami, I think we've
the silver tsunami
called it in the report. The baby boomers are turning 80 this year, and yeah, it's amazing how demographics now are favoring this massive segment of the residential community for seniors.
And are we building enough seniors housing?
No, not enough. It's been undersupplied for years, and it's also not an asset class for all because it's heavily regulated. It's operationally heavy. There is lack of supply, which it's creating demand. So we're starting to see larger players move into the Canadian market. Welltower, in particular, that purchased Amica's portfolio from teachers, close to 5 billion. Chartwell REIT Canadian is also increasing its presence and across the country. So you were seeing a fueling of capital going into this category because of undersupply, but also demographic shifts toward.
Hello, you still there?
Yes.
So, to summarize, where do you think the focus should be for investors looking into 2026?
I think it should be focused on operational excellence, also in alternative asset classes that will provide yield for the long term. So purpose-built rental, certainly we're hearing and we're seeing maybe it's the margins are tight, but if supply continues to be restricted and the right financing is in place, then that you're probably sitting at a right vintage, if you will, to invest in purposeful rental in the future. Senior housing, given undersupply and the shifts in demographic, is providing an interesting investable asset class, but you need to partner with organizations that know how to operate the asset and operate it in an efficient way, or else it'll be challenging to do it on your own. Everything storage, whether it's data storage to self-storage, battery storage, cold storage, defense storage. I think industrial is going to have an interesting growth. We've seen certainly industrial rental rates stabilize over the years, but there are demand drivers, especially on the defense side, that could fuel the next wave of industrial. And retail has been very resilient over the years, been a good news story for the
I
last
thought a
3
lot of
years.
these malls were, these secondary malls were closing down. So why retail?
Purpose-built, open air, which is excuse me, so open air retail where you can drive to, necessity-based, grocery-anchored retail continues to show signs of growth. But on top of that, there's all the area around your malls that could be potentially redeveloped into purpose-built rental that would then feed retail client base, and then vice versa. The retail would be a great amenity to a purpose-built rental, is providing attractive investment thesis around retail. So I think those categories, purpose-built rental, senior housing, industrial, and retail, will be investable assets. But here's the message I think is very, very important. If we don't get shovels to the ground really quickly, it could result in more layoffs on the construction side. And that's a general economic indicator that it could then impact other categories that are doing well, like seniors, like student housing, like hotels, like industrial. So we need to get the construction workers back because it's a multiplier for the rest of the industry, and that requires incentives, new business models, and bold thinking from government for sure.
Fred Cassano, PwC, this has been a really interesting conversation. I appreciate it. If people want to get a copy of your report, is it available publicly?
Absolutely. We do have the Emerging Trends in Real Estate report on the PwC website with a link to real estate. And in fact, you have links to Canada, Asia, Europe, all launched in the last few weeks.
I really enjoyed your presentation at the breakfast, and today's conversation was really interesting and helpful. Thank you very much, and thank you for the challenge that you put forward to I think governments that they've got to reduce taxation, that they've got to reduce the approval time period, to developers that they've got to make more use of AI, that they've got to be concerned about sustainability and turn it from sort of a reporting process to actually incorporating it, to using AI not only in leasing velocity, as you said, and marketing, but also in construction. from a productivity standpoint and modular. And I think that your challenge that we've got a problem in Canada that we're not building enough housing, and that's led to an affordability issue, and that we need to do something about it. And while it may be helped right now by all these deliveries of condos in the shadow rental space, if we don't start building a lot more purpose-built rental, we could have another problem just as profound as we've had in the last couple of years in 2029, 2030, etc. And I think it takes sort of an all of government and an all of economy orientation to reduce taxes, reduce construction costs, become more innovative, improve on approval time periods, and build that housing that we so desperately need to house that next generation, the current young generation of Canadians. Because even with the declines in condo prices and rental prices that you've been talking about, they were really declines from a high in 22 and 23. And from what most people have said, we're just back to 2019 levels. And those 2019 levels were unaffordable. And if we don't do something to bring up supply and bring down the pricing of our housing, we're going to have a whole generation of Canadians, our young people, our kids that can't afford to have that dream of home ownership. And I think that's a shame, and that's wrong, and that's an intergenerational inequity that exists. And so, Fred, I really appreciate your presentation, your analysis, and your challenge to us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. I do think that there's momentum. So in any crisis, there's an opportunity. So there's certainly positive momentum on the policy side, capital side, and new forms of business. So I'm actually hopeful that we embrace them, and that'll help us propel the next generation of real estate. So thank you for having me, and I'm excited to see what's in store for us for next year.
That's our show for tonight, everybody. Thank you for joining. I remind you, I'm Brian Crombie. My show is on every night, 6 o'clock on 960 AM. You can stream me online at saga960am.ca, and you can get all my podcasts and my videos on social media, on my YouTube channel, and on my website, briancrombie.com. Fred, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.